Hey. We'll see him. Everybody.
Thank you.
Hi. Delfeayo Marsalis, y'all.
Thank you. What's happening, y'all? We got to get this party
Hey, man.
right.
Thanks for starting us off with that, man. Thanks a lot. You sound great.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
Thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight. We really appreciate you guys taking the time out to join us to listen to this conversation and to join us on it a little bit later. Delfeayo, how you doing, man?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. You know, ever optimistic here in the Big Easy, and that's what we're known for.
Yeah.
Optimism. In the spirit of Louis Armstrong.
There you go. Well, I thought that we would start this off, first of all, with just you and I having a chat, asking you some questions, and then open it up to everyone else a little bit later. Is that okay?
Okay, however you like.
Cool. So, you know, coming from the musical family that you come from in New Orleans, I can only imagine that there was a lot of music being played and rehearsed and practiced around the house when you were growing up. Is that constant exposure, or was that constant exposure to music the reason that you became a musician?
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that. And it was more just trying to, you know, follow after my brothers, which was not uncommon. You know, Branford was playing saxophone, Went was playing trumpet, and they were in a band called the Creators. And the Creators were known; they were a funk band, and they'll tell you it was pretty sad band by all accounts. But for high school, I mean, they were in high school,
Right.
but they were the only band in the city that could play the Earth, Wind, and Fire horn parts. And the only thing that they didn't have, they never had a trombone. So then I'm like in sixth grade, and I'm hustling. I just started to play trombone. I'm hustling to try to learn these Earth, Wind, and Fire horn parts. And by the time I got the technique together, then they had already gone on to what they were going to do. So, but it started off like that. And then, of course, my dad was playing, and we would frequent some of his jobs as well.
I was going to ask you because, you know, of course, Branford's on playing sax and Wynton's on trumpet. What was it that attracted you to the trombone as your primary instrument?
You know, I always see that the trombone kind of picked me, and I didn't realize it at the time, but trombone players are always, they're real cool. You know, they have a certain kind of a disposition. And, we always say the reason is that the trumpet has to have a different personality. The trumpet has to like lead the band in New Orleans, the New Orleans band I'm talking about. So Wynton's perfect for that. You know, he can have that kind of vision. He's just gonna do whatever's going on around him. He's like, you know, I'm going down with the ship. If he's on the Titanic, we're playing till the end. Saxophone's job is to decide, okay, am I gonna agree with the trumpet or am I gonna disagree with the trumpet? Now the trombone, depending on whether or not the sax is agreeing or disagreeing with the trumpet, that determines what we do. Because if they're agreeing, then we have to say, hold on, bro, let's not get too chummy. And if they're disagreeing, which is usually the case, trombone has to come in and say, everything's gonna be cool.
Wow.
So, you know, that's what we see. There's a reason why the trombone section is in the middle of the jazz orchestra, to keep the trumpets away from the saxophones.
So do you play any other instruments other than the trombone, or is it just specifically?
I play what we call composer's piano. So when I'm writing music, I can play, but it's not real piano, as my daughter would be quick to tell you.
So you mentioned that you actually answered one of my questions earlier, because I know that Wynton and Branford played in a funk band prior to, you know, really coming out as jazz musicians. Did you follow a similar path? Did you play R&B music or soul music or funk music before you really began to get interested in jazz, or did you just jump right in with jazz?
No, so two unfortunate things happened simultaneously. One was the rise of the DJ, and the other was my mother deciding that she'd had enough of her kids going out playing gigs in high school. So by the time I got out there were not a lot of bands to play with. And you know, the way that happened, it was Branford really was the one. Like, he still knows songs from that era, Earth, Wind and Fire and the Brothers Johnson. He could tell you all of the parts, because he was the one in the band that learned all the parts, and he would teach it to like the bass player, say, this is what you play, the guitar player. And you know, Wynton was like, he was more of, I'd say, into like the classical thing at that point, but he just was like, yeah, okay, I'll play some, you know, there were no classical gigs.
Right.
And it was I guess we'd say a better social situation to play in a funk band. So they did that. By the time I came along, it wasn't really a lot of that happening. So no, to answer the question.
So I know Branford and Wynton played some classical music. Did you ever go down that road too?
Oh yeah, and in fact, in high school, that's what I majored. I majored. I really didn't get so much into jazz till I got to Berkeley. I heard a lot of it, but I showed up at Berkeley College of Music, and a lot of the people that was there were holdovers from when Branford was, because Branford spent a little time at Berkeley. Mm-hmm. And then folks just started coming to me, like the jazz aficionado. And fortunately, they had an extensive library. So when guys would come to me and say, yeah, man, I'm checking out this Ben Webster and Lester Young, I said, man, they're killing. And I write the names down. I go to the library. Oh, yeah, okay. Ben Webster, yeah. Sidney Bechet. So I really built up my catalog. So I knew cursory things about jazz going into Berkeley. You know, Miles Davis, John Coltrane, Charlie Parker. I knew the big names, but spending that time with musicians at Berkeley gave me an opportunity to learn about, you know, the wealth of, a part of the wealth. I mean, you'll never really know all of it, but gave me a greater appreciation of, you know, some of the older styles. And that's really kind of where it started.
Well, you know, obviously I know that where you're from has influenced you a great deal, the music and the culture of New Orleans. Talk about a little bit about being from New Orleans and how it impacts your music as a performer and a composer and a producer.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing like New Orleans. In fact, my own music has changed tremendously over the past decade, and it has a lot to do with guys like Trombone Shorty and Big Sam Williams, Corey Henry. These are the foremost New Orleans style trombone players. Even though I'm from here, I don't consider us, if someone said, man, what's some quintessential New Orleans music? I would certainly not mention anybody in my family as the quintessential New Orleans sound. The way that we play, it's only possible coming from New Orleans. But we were just addressing music differently. We were using that foundation. Guys like Donald Harrison and Terrence Blanchard, that's not really, the New Orleans sound is really rooted in funk. Mm-hmm. So I host a community television show. It's called Future Focus. And I was fortunate within the past decade to have Trombone Shorty and Big Sam Williams, as I mentioned, Corey Henry. And each of these guys played a song called the Whoopin' Blues, also known as I Got a Big Fat Woman, Love Me. And that song is this. I haven't played it in a while. So they're playing that. Mm-hmm. And the way that they were addressing it, it made me realize, I said, man, that's totally different from how rhythmically, how I grew up more in the J.J. Johnson vein, you know? So whereas I'd be playing more like, they'd be playing. So that way of playing is what keeps the people shaking that drum.
Right. And we've actually had Trombone Shorty and Big Sam's Funky Nation at the Al Stevens Center, so we know.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I was going to say when Trombone Shorty was here, I think it's the first time we had a second line going on in the Jemison Concert Hall.
Oh, he must have came there before us. But that's how we had the people up. We had, that's just a great thing about New Orleans is it can be exclusive and inclusive at the same time.
Yeah, and I know you did that too. Yes, so your music does have more of a funky element to it and a fun party kind of aspect to it as well. And that's intentional, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah, you can't. It's hard to do that by mistake. Well, I also have a guy in the band named Roger Lewis. We call him the dirty old man. He's 78 years old, and man, Roger he is the life of the show. And I can't recall whether I think he was not available. He plays with the Dirty Dozen Brass Band, so I think when he came to Birmingham, I think he wasn't in the band, but we center the show around Roger because he just has that spirit. There's something about Roger, man. You gotta love Roger Lewis. He's the real package. He's just, he embodies New Orleans music more so than anybody else that's in the band.
Wow.
And you're just like, oh yeah, okay, this guy is a musician. 60 years, he's been playing 60, 65 years of his life.
Wow.
Oh yeah, and he's still dancing, and he's got that spirit. He's got that thing about his playing, that is essential, and it's essential to me. This is what the country needs now more than ever.
Right.
Folks say, well, what's going to happen after the pandemic? If we get that under control, and after the quarantine, are you going to write music that's indicative of that what occurred? And I'm like, no. I don't want to write music that's indicative of that aspect of it. I want to write about the celebration that occurs once it's over.
Yeah.
And that's what New Orleans is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about the pain. It's about the release of the pain.
Right. Exactly. I totally agree. I'm hoping that's going to be the spirit of the music once we get out of this thing.
That's going to be the spirit of our music.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that.
Yeah, because we've had enough sadness and pain.
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. And there was a time for that. There was a time for the music. And I always see that jazz is a survival music, much like New Orleans itself. And that's the thing I noticed about coming from New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Everybody's like, what's going to happen to New Orleans? I say, man, New Orleans has been around. And the heart of New Orleans, really, if you go back, it's the Africans that came here. And we had lots of people. It's the true melting pot. But the reason that the Africans are really important, not only from a cultural standpoint of view, and the love that they brought all of the time, but they survived. Man, just trying to survive the Middle Passage, then making it over here, then those circumstances, and they just were able to just somehow muster that courage and that love, man, and that's what Louis Armstrong represents.
Right.
That's what the thing is about. When you hear Louis Armstrong, man, he never played a bad note, almost never. Video, records, and he just embraced everything. And I would imagine his position, because it's tough. It's always been tough. America's had things that's always been tough. Man, Louis Armstrong always was able to address it with the proper perspective and the proper attitude. And that's what we try to do.
Yeah, that's so powerful. I've heard your brother say many times that Louis Armstrong never played a bad note in his life.
It's true. If you find one, please send me the video. Record it. Because he just, phenomenal. Really, really, really a serious commitment, but more important, to me, most importantly, commitment to his audience, commitment to what the people needed. He's not the guy that was like, well, what I feel like is. Right. You know what he felt like. He always felt like making sure that you had a good time.
Wow.
You enjoyed yourself. And that to me is the New Orleans element. A lot of times people say, man, I was in New York, man, and the jazz, it's proficient, but it's not the same. And I said, New Orleans, we know what it is.
So that leads me to another question that I had for you. Is oftentimes musicians have as their influences other musicians who play the same instrument. So is that the case with you? Are your influences mainly trombone players, or do you draw your influences from all different kinds of other musicians and other instruments?
Well, as a performer, I would say it's mostly trombone. It's mostly, it started with J.J. Johnson was the main guy that I had interest in. And he's pretty progressive in terms of the entire spectrum of jazz artists. Then as I matured, I learned about the older players. If it's Jack Teagarden, Al Gray, Tyree Glenn, Curtis Fuller, guys that I had, and well, not Curtis, not an older player, but I had more of an understanding. Even some individuals I was able to meet and have more of an appreciation for what they represented. Not just the technical prowess, but really the spirit and the soul, which is something that audiences are attracted to much more so than the technical.
Right. When you were in Birmingham, we talked a little bit backstage, and I told you that Berklee College of Music in Boston was my alma mater as well. In fact, I got there I graduated in May of 1993, but I got there, I think the year maybe after you graduated or after you left. And I was we had the same major, we shared the same major. I was in the music production and engineering program, which, as you know, at that time was a fairly new program. They didn't have that many students in that program at that time. And I was always curious because one of my jobs when I was there was as a studio manager. So, I was that guy that was booking all the studios for the students. And I had access to the student tape archive. And I told you I saw one of your 24-track reels in there. I was tempted to pull it down and put it up on a machine and listen. And I said, man, you know what? I'm not going to do that because I don't want to get discouraged.
My training was homegrown.
Mm-hmm.
I just went to Berklee. It was almost kind of a fluke to even end up at Berklee. Mm-hmm. And the short version of that story is I had gone to the Tanglewood Institute for summer programs at my junior and senior years. And I had received some type of scholarship to go to Boston University to study under Ron Barron, who was the principal trombone with the Boston Symphony. Wow. And that summer I played with the McDonald's All-American Band, and there was a trumpet player named Richard Holliday. His brother played alto saxophone, Christopher Holliday. And I happened to go to stay at their house, even though my mother was like, don't go and stay at those people's house, which is another story. But I go to the house, and Richard Holliday is like, man, why do you want to play that classical crap? You need to come to Berklee. And until that moment, I hadn't actually thought of it. And I said, and I called Branford, and at that, Branford and I didn't really talk so much. He was the older brother that just didn't want to have anything to do with the youngsters. So I called Branford, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'm thinking about going to Berklee. What do you know? And he's like, oh, yeah, man, I know everybody up there. So he made a couple of calls, and literally 2 weeks before school started, I made the decision to go to Berklee.
Wow.
I show up, and I get to financial aid, and I don't know if I auditioned. I don't remember how the whole thing transpired, but showed up at financial aid, and there's a lady named Sharon Bridges. And I remember sitting at her desk, and she said, so how are you going to pay for your education? I said, it's financial aid. You're supposed to tell me. Looked at me. She said, hold on a minute. I guess she's thinking, okay, this is going to go one of two ways.
Right.
So she went back and she talked to somebody. I don't know who she called. She called some people. And I guess Branford must have told the right people in advance. So she brought some forms out and she said she hooked it up. And it was like, Berklee then wasn't like Berklee now. It was manageable. So she hooked it up, and man, it was a great time. I loved it. I loved it there.
Well, I was always curious because the people, normally people would expect you, if you're going to a university or college for music, that you would gravitate more towards performance. I'm curious about what led you to get into music production, and making records.
Well, Don Palouse, that was the very first year that I was there, was the first year of the actual program with Don.
Right.
Don Palouse had engineered a recording, at least one recording for Winton. Mm-hmm. It was a Christmas. They did We Three Kings on a CBS Christmas album, probably back in 81 or 2. Mm-hmm. So when I told Branford, he was like, yeah, Don Palouse is about to start the program up there. And I'd always been interested in production, but again, my skills were more homegrown. I would just get a microphone and I would make demo tapes and audition tapes. I'd record recitals. So it was more just kind of common sense learning, and that's how I did everything.
Wow.
In fact, when Winton made his audition tape for Columbia Records, CBS, he and my dad went to the studio in town. And the lead up to that, I had been recording them in the living room.
Wow.
Went and heard my recording. He's like, damn, man, this sounds better than the studio. He's like, what are you doing? And but I didn't actually know, but I came to start understanding more about the acoustics and this and that and yada, yada. So production for me, and the interesting thing when I was at Berkeley was that there's the first year I was playing more, and then the second year it was more production. Then the third year I was playing more. And it wasn't by design, it's just kind of how it worked out. And a listen at my recitals will verify that. Okay.
I don't know about your recitals, but mine were pretty brutal. So
yeah, we had some good time. My first recital, I had Charnette Moffett, the bassist.
Oh wow!
This was before he played with Wynton. I'm pretty sure this was before he started playing with Wynton. Because this was 80. It was before he started playing with Wynton. And he came up, and I think Branford and Wynton, actually, they came to the first recital.
Wow.
And, yeah, it was a good time. It was good times.
That got to be a lot of pressure, having him sitting in there.
No, actually not then. For some reason. I was glad to see him. They drove up, and I was like, maybe later, it's like being on the bandstand with him. It's like, oh, got it. But, I was glad to see him, and they drove up, and then they left. That's kind of strange. I got to ask him, man, why did y'all drive to Boston for my recital? But it was good times.
Yeah, cool, man. I wanted to tell you that your performance at the Al Stevens Center a few months ago was one of the high points of our season that year. And the thing that impressed me the most, aside from the great performance, was the educational component workshop that you did with our students in the community. And I remember one of the faculty members from the university, Dr. Steve Roberts, said, well, do you think he's going to ask any of our students if they want to play? And, we've never had a workshop before where the clinician said, hey, bring your horns up. I want you to play. And I remember when you said, does anybody have their horns with them? And kids were looking around like, no. And he's like, man, go get your horns. And I just remember those kids were running. I mean, literally running out to get back to the back of the hall to get their horns. And it was probably one of the most inspiring workshops I've ever seen. And you were so generous with your time and also honest with your critique of their performances. And I think it was helpful for them. But I was always amazed at how anxious they were to get up on stage and play with Delfeayo Marsalis, high school students.
I think it was less playing with me, just the fact of being up on the stage.
That might be true.
What I mean is, like, Branford and I talk often about the fact that a lot of the students don't, not these, but in general, across the nation, students don't like jazz. They like the idea of standing up in front of people and improvising. They like the chance of being able to stand up. I did a workshop in a middle school kid on trumpet in Canada. And I was like, why do you like to solo? And he was like, it's a way that I forget how he said it, but it was like, it's an affirmation that I am here.
Wow.
I'm alive. And a lot of the students perceive it as that. It has nothing to do with the audience. It only has to do with, I want my chance. So the reason that I'm so brutally honest with the students is, like I tell them, if we were playing basketball or football, if you were at one of those camps and I want to get to the NBA, what are we going to be like? Hey, very good. Yeah, man, keep it up. It's going to be like, no, bro, you have absolutely no chance. And then when you can take that critique and you can keep working, maybe there's a chance. Yeah. But in other words, if you're going to crumble just because somebody says, man, that sounds terrible, there's no way for you to make it, you know what I mean, on the long term. There's no way for you to consistently do it. So one of my great stories, actually, what's the art school in Birmingham?
The Alabama School of Fine Arts.
School of Fine Arts. So they came to New Orleans. I think it was after the show. And the teacher had warned me in advance. She said, look, there's not a lot of, only 2 students are looking to be professionals and they have other majors and yada, yada. We just want them to have a good time. Maybe my reputation had preceded me. She said, "So just, we want you to take it easy." So I said, "Yes, ma'am, no problem, I understand." I walk in the room and I say to the band, I said, "Who's your representative?" And the band director said, No. Who is the band representative? So it was the trombone guy. Trombone guy stands up, said, "Stand up, young man." I said, "Now, I've been warned by your teacher that I need to take it easy on you. So you have a choice. I want the band to talk amongst yourselves. I'm either going to take it easy on you or we're going to go full bore."
Wow.
So I said, "You got 2 minutes." I walked up. 2 minutes later, I came back. "Yes, sir, what's the decision?" He was like, "Full bore." Like, let's get it on.
Wow.
Because I think that's the thing is, and it goes a lot to how my parents were, and a lot of the older generation, man, it was tough love.
Mm-hmm.
And the kids a lot today, we pamper them a lot, but it's not that they really want that pampering.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be involved in something, and once you get in the middle of it, it could be tough. And you say, "Okay, well, I have to endure. I'm here now." So to your point, when the students came up, I remember, man, it's like none of those kids had actually listened to any solos. And that's what I'm telling them. I'm saying it's difficult for me to actually tell you something that's helpful because you don't even listen to jazz.
Right.
You stand up and you play a solo, it'd be like you came to basketball camp and you can't dribble. I mean, how much can I actually do to help? So, but at any rate, I really, my efforts are to help the students. And me standing up and playing and showing off the proficiency of my band or myself, that's not actually, I mean, it's a good exhibition, but it's not actually going to help the students the same way as if they're up there. And when they're up there, we're like, "Hey, you got a responsibility. You got to carry your own weight." Right. And that's kind of the technique that we like to use.
So, I mean, how important is education and giving back to those young students? How important is that versus playing and performing? Is it equal, or is it, as you reach a certain point in your life, does that training and working with young people, does that value exceed being on the bandstand?
There's no way to say one value exceeds the other. But what I will say is that what I have recently learned is the most effective approach will be to train younger musicians who are highly skilled and let them play for their peers. Because I coach, I founded the Uptown Music Theater, and it's students, and that's what they do, musical theater. And the kids every year, they go to this big competition in Atlanta, and they're a minority. They're like one of 2, maybe 3 black groups out of 110 that show up. But every year they come and they bring the heat. So 7 out of the 9 years that we've gone, they've hoisted this big trophy for outstanding production. That's when you get on the stage and you perform for 3,000, 4,000 people. And this year, I decided, well, I'm going to let the kids go into the schools and let their peers. And man, that was more effective than playing for 3,000 or 4,000 strangers.
Wow.
They were with their peers. And it made me realize, these kids are not, I mean, they're going to respond to me a little bit, but right. They want to see someone their age doing something.
That's true.
These kids were like, just after they finished, all of the kids came and it was like a big family and all these kids wanted to join. How can we join Uptown Music Theater? And it made me realize that the kids want to be a part of something great and excellence, but really with their peers more so than with the grown-ups. So saying that to say, I like the idea and I like to help the students, but my focus now is to really work with students that can show and be an example for their peers.
Right, right. Well, I want to ask one more question before we open it up to everyone else here. And it's a question that I think about a lot, and I just want to get your thoughts about it. What do you think, or what is, in your opinion, is the state of jazz today? I remember in the early 90s when there was a renaissance of sorts with young lions, as they were called back in during that time period. And it was just an exciting time for jazz. And what do you think the state of the music is in today?
Right. Well, I'd say that the Young Lions started actually in the mid 80s, but it went on through the 90s. Jazz is a survival music. Mm-hmm. It's a lot like New Orleans. New Orleans is a survival city. That's why jazz was born here. Mm-hmm. So jazz will be around, but the And the other part of that is now we have people playing all different styles. So you might have Dr. Michael White, he's playing more of the traditional style. You have my band, we play anything from the brass band funk to the modern. And then you have, Wynton at Lincoln Center, they're playing more repertory kinds of things and other things. Mm-hmm. You have Branford, who you got to really love jazz to listen to what Branford's playing. I mean, that's, boy, whew, he's taking it really out. And then you have, Donald Harrison has the Mardi Gras Indian style that he's infusing. So at any rate, saying that to say, we have all these different styles that people are playing. So it's going to continue to have that kind of an effect where you have many different sounds to choose from. But the other part of that is jazz generally becomes what America needs. And I'm certain that what America needs now is more uplifting music. So that's our focus is, in the 60s, you listen to what went on in the 60s, and man, the country, it was a really turbulent time. So the music reflected that. Charles Mingus and Ornette Coleman, all along, Louis Armstrong was saying, everything's going to be cool. The orchestra was like, yeah, we're going to keep on swinging and chug. But you also had these extremes that were going on. Then, the civil rights movement ended. Martin Luther King, of course, assassinated. Malcolm X, John F. Kennedy, all of these people were assassinated. Then the country was kind of lost its way from the standpoint of the direction. It's like we were going in a direction, and then it was kind of a confusion. And then the music kind of had that same uncertainty to it.
Right. And
it came back in one direction in the 80s. And what was important then was, okay, there's no more confusion. We're going to do the real straight ahead. Right. And then that came along. And then, as you said, through the 90s, and then it broke out into more of every different thing going on. So there was less of that focus on that. So at this point, we want to keep everything going, but we really have to, the musicians, in my estimation, who are going to make the greatest impact are going to be those that really are able to uplift the people and let them know that everything is going to be all right.
Wow, it's powerful. So Amanda, I think we're going to open it up for questions at this point. And if there are questions that anyone has, you can put them in the chat. And
I've got a question here. I'm going to answer. Matt Positek. Sorry, I know I'm butchering your name, so sorry about that. Positek. At any rate, and he did ask me privately, so sorry for putting you out there like that, bro. He says the importance of listening to jazz and enjoying it is as important as improving technical skill. What songs should people listen to draw inspiration for their own souls and style? Without any question, Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker. Those are, in fact, Miles Davis said it. I didn't realize this. I had been saying it for a while. Miles Davis said that in the 50s. Jazz can be described in 4 words: Louis Armstrong, Charlie Parker. The importance of those two individuals is that they just brought the joy. They had the direct pipeline to wherever the source of great music emanates, they were there. And when you hear Louis Armstrong, it's something about it. Even if you're like, I'm not a fan of that old stuff, man, it's going to lift you up. If you give it a chance, it will. And Charlie Parker, too. A lot of people say, well, he played really fast and this and that, but man, he just had the sound of joy. And that's what we want to really capture more than anything is Charlie Parker make you dance. So he's playing all this complicated stuff. While he's making you dance and putting you in a good mood, we worked out the complicated stuff and forgot about the dancing in the good mood. So I'd say that. And the other part of that is I'd say anything that you like. If you like the way something sounds, man, check it out and listen to it and learn it. And it could be anything. Because to me, the great jazz musician of the future will be able to play everything. He'll be able to really play the funk, really play the jazz, really play the traditional. But the factor that, the determining factor of whether or not you are a jazz musician is, do your 8th notes swing? And that's just, there's no way around that. You know what I mean? There's people that can say, well, I'm a jazz musician. And look, I'm cool with it. You can be a smooth player. You can be however you want to categorize yourself. The cats that really have studied are on the inside of that swing. Mm-hmm. It's not to say that you have to play old school. You have to know what it is.
Right. It's awesome. Greg Davis had a question. How has your production work affected your playing, and how has your playing affected your production?
Yeah, too many hours in the studio. Boy, if I could take those hours back, dang, damn it. but you can't. So I would say that the production is helpful in one respect, but these brass instruments are, how did JJ describe it, as an unforgiving, gangly beast. So as many hours as you can put on the instrument is important. So I would say, but it's a trade-off. It's a trade-off. And you just have to be realistic at some point.
Right.
You spend the amount of time, you reap what you sow, as they say. So, but I would say that the production really helps. It kind of hurts because sometimes when I'm playing, if we're doing a take, in fact, some of the great Elvin Jones, what happened? Oh, I'm spotlighting. Sorry, you threw me off. Elvin Jones and John Clayton, I would stop a take because somebody messed up. And they're like, never stop a take. We can always fix it later.
Wow.
So I said, but that was a lesson to learn, because I'm thinking about it from a production standpoint. I'm saying, oh, no, hold on. We got it. And which I should have known, because as much as I edited stuff together, I should have known you just let it go. And then, so from a production standpoint of view, that's one thing that I had to get used to. Because if I hear something that's not right, something goes off in my mind. Like musicians don't think like that.
Right.
But I'm thinking, oh, wait, this has got to be fixed. The good part of that is if we have a great take and I know that there was a mistake somewhere, maybe it was in the beginning of the melody. I said, okay, let's just play these 8 bars and then I can drop those 8 bars in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody's talking about the fanfare for the common man. Man, I'm kind of upset about that fanfare for the common man, because if you've ever seen the video with Emerson, Lake, and Palmer, Emerson, Palmer, Lake, whichever one it is, man, these cats, I think they got the groove on us on that one. That's what we were trying to go for. They're out in I think they're in the Philadelphia football stadium, and it's like 3 of them, and the piano player is just taking it out. It's really funky. They got a killing version of that, fanfare for the common man. But thank you for that. Sorry, I'm just kind of taking.
Okay, I was going to say Jasmine Young says, how long did it take you to become one of the famous jazz trombone artists today?
I don't think I'm that. Still working at it. Let me get my tie hooked up. That has never really been so important to me. It's just not. I grew up again with Branford, and especially Winton, what he came out doing, and I was happy to be a part of that and working on a production team. So, I was happy to be a part of kind of that Renaissance movement. And my thing was really capturing the sound of the music a certain way. There was no one of my generation who was interested in that and sound, and was really able to make a big impact. Even when I hear records today, it's like, man, back to the 80s and what we were doing then, the difference in the quality of the sound. So I'm glad about that. As far as playing, I just enjoy playing. I enjoy entertaining folks, and I like to play things that are slow and expressive. So that's what I try to do.
Brian Hodges says, hey, Del, I was enjoying listening to your Uptown Jazz Orchestra earlier. I noticed sometimes you have 5 saxes plus a clarinet. How did that come about? It sounds great.
Thank you. Well, Gregory Ajib is a great clarinetist. He's like a really great clarinetist, and he's a good tenor saxophonist. So if our tenor saxophonist is available, then we like to bring the 6. And the other thing about it is family has always been important to me. So that's what I think one of the successes of our Uptown Music Theater is, that it's a family environment, and the same thing with the Uptown Jazz Orchestra. So I'm just like, man, sometimes we'll have a gig on the road, and I don't say, okay, we have to bring 14 musicians. We'll send out the memo and say, who wants to go out? Wow. And sometimes it's 16, 17, 18 people. And we know that that's going to mean, a pay cut, but It's more about the camaraderie. Right. That's more important to us than the bottom line. So that's how it is. Sometimes we'll have, in fact, in New York, we had 4 trombones. I don't think we ever do, sometimes we do 5 trombones. Yeah, that's right. Got to let the trumpets know. We had 5 trumpets, 5 trombones. I think it was only 5 saxophones. Mm-hmm. But, and that's the great thing about New Orleans is we know how to not get in the way. We know how to make that work. Yeah. So, we'll show up in places. Man, I did a radio show, and the people were like, just bring 2 musicians. We don't have any space. And I'm like, okay. Man, I showed up about 14 strong. And the people were freaking out, and And I said, look, man, it's going to be cool. This is what we do. And
Uh-huh.
it was a small room.
Uh-huh.
And the guys were still, boys, see, once we start playing, you
Mhm.
could just see they were like, what? I was trying to tell them, this is what we do. We can play for a small room. We can play for the big room. We can play short. We can play long. We play something funky. We can get avant-garde. You know, that's the great part of the band is depending on where you need to be. That's
Right.
what we need.
Wow. Laura McGuinn, I think I pronounced that right. How do you allocate your time between practice, composing, playing, teaching, and just daily living things?
Ooh, yeah. In the words of Ron Carter, practice when you can. But that's a great question. I am actually at the point where I'm trying to organize my time better because my composing, generally I just compose when I have a record coming up or something. But I saw, who was the civil rights? Oh, I can't think of the name. Gloria Steinem.
Hmm.
Gloria Steinem, who I saw at two plays, ironically, I don't go to New York that often, but twice I was in New York and I went to the Sunday matinee of shows, and there's Gloria Steinem.
Wow.
One was the Billie Holiday story with, can't think of who was starring in that, and the other was, it was another play about something. It was a women's kind of, anyway, Gloria Steinem on Oprah Winfrey said, spend more time doing that which only you can uniquely do. And I'm like, man, I've been trying to get to that ever since because that's the real thing. You know, the reality for me, some of the things is like, if you can really compose music, spend time doing that. If you can really write like literature or poetry, spend time doing that. Because not just anybody can do that. The creative endeavors, and there's other things, it's not just that. You know, if you're great at science and you can work in a science lab, spend your time doing the thing that you really can do. So I'm not really answering the question, but the best thing to do is to really have a schedule and stick to a schedule.
Good evening. Valerie says, good evening, and thank you for sharing your time with us. What is your favorite song to play?
Generally, it's What a Wonderful World, and that's a song that was kind of introduced to me by Elvin Jones. And when I say introduced, I mean, you know, Elvin Jones was known as a modern drummer, but he really loved Louis Armstrong. Like he really, really loved him. I didn't really understand that. And he would always encourage me to play What a Wonderful World. And I was like, oh, what a wonderful world. Oh, man. But then I started to understand where he was coming from. It's like to really understand where Louis Armstrong was coming from was the important message. The message wasn't just play this song. The message was understand what that song really represented Louis Armstrong in a lot of ways. I mean, he played all kind of great music. We could, you know, Potato Head Blues and West End Blues, and we could go through the history of the 500 or 600 or 800 songs that he recorded and played. But there's something about that What a Wonderful World that really spoke to his character as a man and as a human and as an American. Like it really captured what needed to be captured at the time.
Right.
So, but that's generally my favorite song.
James C. Camel asks, you and your siblings are so passionate about your craft. How did your parents plant that seed?
You know, we grew up right around the civil rights movement, right toward the end. And my parents were not, you know, first of all, it was my mother more so. My dad, it's like a typical Southern family. The man does the work. He brings home the bacon. The wife or the mother does everything else. So my mother, she was in charge of most of the discipline, unless it was, you know, the belt had to be taken out, then she would wait for my dad to come home. She cooked all of the meals. She kept the house clean. She made sure that we went to school, made sure we did our homework. But she was really passionate. She was one of the early feminists. Like she really, and, you know, the balance was that she had no females other than herself in her immediate family. She herself had 2 brothers and no sisters. And there were 6 of us, 6 boys and no girls in the family. So it was her trying to navigate this world where she's around all these men all the time. So she had kind of a tough exterior that she would go to, and she didn't take no mess. And it was tough then. You know, there were things that would go down, and she had a certain mindset that, you know, like the stuff that we see today that's going on, and now all of a sudden people are like, wow, man, what's going on? You know, George Floyd. You know, we've been dealing with that for so long. So I would say that that really had a lot to do with it. You know, her perspective on, you've got to be prepared, you've got to do the work, and you've got to, and then they would always tell me, you know, my uncles and people from her generation would say, man, there was no kind of opportunities for Negroes, people of color. It was just not the opportunities. They would say, and I mean, not just one or two people, a bunch of folks said that their belief was, if the job requires a master's degree, get two, and a doctorate. Now, you still won't get the job, but you will have learned a lot in the process. And, you know, the vibe was, you got to work, you got to do it for yourself, because the cavalry's not coming to save you.
Well, we've got about 7 more minutes. I want to take this question from Lee, and I'm going to paraphrase it. The question is, did the trombone pick you as in its sound, or did you not want to follow your brother's footsteps?
Well, I kind of answered that earlier, Lee. You might have checked in later, and I said the trombone picked me, and I wanted to follow in my brother's footsteps. So, you know, it's one of those things that, well, that's not the right way to say it, following in their footsteps. I wanted to be a part of what they were doing.
Right.
So, you know, and that was just something that we did, you know. A lot of folks was playing music back then. You know, I mean, it's like the challenge, and I didn't get to this earlier when you mentioned about jazz, the challenge that we really will have as instrumentalists is that with the rise of rap music and these shows like The Voice, there's like, music is disappearing. Like you watch these shows and it's only a singer and the music just appears. You almost never see bands anymore. But look, I mean, that's just what it is. Mm-hmm. So we have to be cognizant of that. And we always would say that the older jazz musicians, they played in a vocal style because the vocalists had all of the gigs. And that's how they got gigs. And today, even if you sound like a vocalist, you can't get no gig if you're playing a horn. But it's just something that we have to be mindful of. So that is tough. But anyway, sorry, I messed up the question.
We got time for maybe 1 or 2 more. I'm going to go back up to, I think it's Jasmine, who asked about improvisation. She says, do you have any pointers on how to improv on tenor sax and the clarinet, or any books you know that can help me?
No, books aren't going to help me. Charlie Parker and Louis Armstrong. No, I mean, I don't. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. Like, what do you want to do? You know, learn some songs. Just pick up any record that you can manage. You know, there's a great Johnny Hodges. There's a CD collection called the Johnny Hodges Small Group Sessions. It's like $50 on iTunes, if you can still get it. And it was originally released on Columbia. It was called The Smooth One. Man, great songs. Like simple, easy kind of songs. Man, just listen to that and learn those songs, you know? They got songs like, everybody's favorite is called The Peaches Are Better Down the Road. And but it's like the groove. That's the one that we have all the students learn. You listen at that song and listen at it once and then try to sing it. And then you're going to be able to sing more of it than you think. And there's a part that you're not going to be able to sing. Then you listen to it again. Then you listen to it another time. Then you pick up your horn. Then you work it out. That's how you learn the music, because that means something. You know, that means something. Books don't actually mean anything. Books only mean stuff if you can read. Like the story means something. You see what I mean? It's like in music. It's like, I don't want that to come across the wrong way when I say it. What I'm saying is like the written note. The written note doesn't actually mean anything. By which I'm saying, if I play this for you, and you say, or you say, okay, that's an 8th note, that's 2 16th notes in a quarter note. Maybe I write it totally wrong, and I write it out. And then I say, okay, but this is what I played. What you remember is what I played.
Right.
The analysis of what it is not really what's important. I'm sorry. I'm getting off the track. We don't have a lot of time. Sorry, y'all.
Well, we've got time for one more question. And
we got time. Where y'all got to go? I ain't got nowhere to go.
Well, I think we have to be done by 7 o'clock.
Why? Y'all didn't pay the Zoom bill? Oh, man, get the extended Zoom, bro. What y'all doing? All right, what we got?
Valerie asked, what genre, and you probably answered this earlier, what genre of music other than jazz influenced your style and creativity?
I didn't answer. Well, the New Orleans funk, but all kinds of things. The funny thing about music is, man, I could play. I played on a record with Elvin Jones. It's called Dominion's Dominion. And the weekend before I went to the session, I sat in with a fella here named Kermit Ruffins. And Kermit is known for doing what they call reefer songs. One of the reefer songs, in it, he sings the thing and he says, I like reefer. I like to smoke it. That's just the rhythm. And I swear to you, man, I'm playing a solo on like a modern jazz. It's like we burning out. And all of a sudden I say, ba-da-da-da, ba-da-la-da. And I'm like, wait, what is? And then I'm like, oh my goodness. I sat in with Kermit and heard that, and it was stuck in my mind.
Wow.
So you never know where it's going to come from. It could come from anywhere,
Wow. Well, I think my tech folks are saying that we got...
Man, y'all got to get it together. All right, we're going home. All right, y'all. That's it.
I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this and being gracious enough to do it for us. and take up so much of your time today. Thank you, Del.
Charlie Parker's 100 years old, August the 29th. So
wow.
Listen to some Charlie Parker, y'all. He's going to put you in the right frame.
Oh. Well, thanks again, man. Thanks to everybody for tuning in. And we hope to see you again next time.